So again, this is the Elevate Youth California Youth Substance Use Disorder Prevention Program. This webinar will be covering the training to go over the data reporting tool that you all will be submitting quarterly over this partnership. Next slide. And just a reminder, this webinar is recorded, and the slides, along with the recording, will be shared next week or later this week online. And so we'll post that online and also send out a friendly reminder along with the data reporting tool template. So you'll get an email following this webinar with the recording, the data reporting tool slides, as well as the actual data reporting tool template for your cohort. In this webinar, we're going to be covering a brief introduction to go over the quarterly progress, and then going over the quarterly progress report. We'll share some resources that our team has developed to help support you while you're completing your data reporting tool, or what we call the quarterly progress report. And then we'll have some final questions and answers at the end. And again, more than welcome to drop in questions in the chat as well as in the Q&A, and we'll try to answer those as we cover each section. So a quick introduction from our team. My name is Pulvinder Kaur. I'm a program officer here at the center and manage the day-to-day events of the Elevate Youth California program here at the center. The Elevate Youth California team is overseen by Matt Cervantes, who's our Managing Director of Healthy Youth Development Programs, and I'll allow Andrew and Latajane to also introduce themselves.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Haw, and I'm the Program Associate for the Elevate Youth California program. Just excited to be here and share this with all of you, and I'll pass it to Latajane.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Latajane Hull and I'm the program assistant for EYC. Similar to Andrew, excited to be here today and support all of you through this grant period. And I'll go ahead and pass it over to our evaluation team.
Good morning everyone, I'm Emi Avalos, Evaluation Officer, and I'm just happy to be here and also to support you with data collection. I'll pass it to Brianna.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brianna Mattis. I'm the Evaluation Associate, and just echoing the excitement to be here and to work with you all through this grant.
Thank you all for those introductions. And so for everyone on this webinar or listening to this recording, this is our day-to-day team. So Andrew, Latajane, and I make up the program aspect of the team for Elevate Youth California here at the center. And we're so appreciative to be supported by our evaluation team colleagues, Brianna and Noemi. And so if you have any questions related to data, the quarterly progress report, and any of the other tools that we're going to be sharing with you, you're more than welcome to email us and get in touch to see how we can support you. So we're going to go ahead and cover a brief introduction. And so what we'll do is I'll cover very high level, more so of the why of the quarterly progress report, to being able to give you an understanding of, you know, our perspective and the reason why we have this tool in place. So, you know, oftentimes things can seem transactional in funder grantee relationships, and, you know, it seems as if it's, you know, we're given these dollars and you're producing this work. And we want to move beyond that transactional relationship. We really consider Elevate Youth California and all of our programs here at the center to be more of relationship building and a partnership. And so in hopes of continuing on this aspect of this work and really thinking about the partnership and relationship building of our work together, we want to share high level, you know, a little bit about the background and the formation of this data reporting tool and what we use this data for. Next slide. The real purpose of this is really for accountability. You know, this is Elevate Youth California is funded through Proposition 64, which comes from California state tax dollars. So we are accountable to the state and our contract with the state in ensuring that these dollars are used for in the best ways to support those communities who have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. And so in addition to the accountability, we really want to be able to utilize these tools to identify challenges and areas of support as well. So you'll notice as Noemi and Brianna cover the data reporting tool, or what we call also the quarterly progress report, you'll see those areas and pieces where you can include information about the challenges, how you're moving forward in those sorts of challenges, but also where you need support. You know, one of the pieces around our partnership with the state is not only to be an administrator of this contract and ensuring these dollars are reaching those communities who have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs, but to also be a technical assistance provider. And so you'll see in our relationship with each of our funded partners, all of the tracks, whether it's the standard track, the new innovation track, which will be launched soon, and also the capacity building cohort. We are looking to provide technical assistance to meet the needs that you have to further the work and reach of your work. So we're excited to be able to do that. And thirdly, to demonstrate all of the amazing work that you all are doing. So there's so many great aspects and great success stories that our funded partners are having, you know, and we want to make sure that we can relay this information to those stakeholders of this funding, as well as to others that are looking to potentially get access to this funding as well. And so we want to make sure that this funding remains in the hands of community organizations who reflect and represent the communities and the youth that they are serving. And so in order to do this, we do have to have some of those data points and, you know, to share the overall reach and outcomes that you all are accomplishing over the period of our partnership. Now I'm going to go over from, you know, curious on kind of what the formatting might work or might look like. So I do want to share that the data reporting tool is a Excel file with the following tabs. So there's an introductory tab that has background and instructions. If you ever forget when your data reporting tool is due or what period you're covering, how to submit it to the center, all of that, it's on that first tab. That tab is only for, you know, background information and instructions. There's nothing that needs to be edited on that tab, you know, but it's more so for those instructions. The second tab is the program profile tab, and then these four tabs will be the tabs that you are covering. So program profile, demographics, youth empowerment, and then participant outcomes and capacity building. Those are the areas where you will be submitting data. And then the last tab is a field description. You won't be editing this tab. This is more so just to be able to make sure that the reporting tool is seamless, where there's drop downs and there's options for you to select, and then areas where only where you're entering data. So it makes it easier for us to aggregate as well. Next slide. Program profile tab. This is the first tab that you'll be completing, and this tab has high-level information about information on all of your active partners and how you've engaged, that you have engaged over the last quarter, as well as your technical assistance needs. This allows us to know the types, the folks that you're partnering with, the sectors that they're in, and that helps us to sharing with the stakeholders of this funding stream to know that community partners and community organizations have diverse partnerships, you know, whether that be schools, with partnerships with elected officials, with different county and county or city agencies, and that it varies whether that's religious congregations or religious entities, you name it. There's a number of different robust partnerships that the Elevate Youth California cohorts are able to engage. And then that second piece around technical assistance, it allows you an opportunity to just share the technical assistance needs that you may have, so that we can make sure that we're providing and prioritizing those technical assistance needs. Next tab is the demographic tab. And this tab you'll see is a bit detailed. This really allows us to have the demographic data of new youth participants and young folks who are participating or who are completing the EYC funded program. So you might be thinking, oh, what are these demographic, what are the specific demographics? Noemi and Brianna will jump into that in just a minute, but I did want to share that this information is extremely beneficial for us as well in relaying the reach that we have. This not only covers race, ethnicity, it covers specific focus groups that were identified in the application. Some of these include LGBTQ2S+, housing insecure youth, foster care youth, systems impacted youth, and allows us to also know the age range of the youth that you're connecting with. This really, again, ensures that we are focused and our programming is focused on the communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. The next tab is the Youth Empowerment tab. In this tab, you have the opportunity to really share information about your prevention program activities. So, you know, in the last quarter, what activities did you carry out? You know, what topics were covered, the primary audience, and the number of participants. So where that last tab really covered, you know, a breakdown of the new participants and those who have completed the program, this one allows us to see a duplicated number of youth that are engaged. And you might be a little bit confused right now, but I can assure you that once our evaluation team covers the data reporting tool, and once you see it, you'll understand what I'm referring to. And so this allows us to see, you know, if you're having weekly events and activities or monthly events and activities with the same number of youth and you have a cohort, it allows us to see the times that the number of times that you're engaging with them, how frequently you're engaging with them, and what topic areas you're covering. Again, this is super beneficial because it allows us to be able to share what sort of activities and events are occurring with this funding. And the last tab, which varies for each of our cohorts. And so for today's webinar, we'll be covering, you know, the participant and capacity building tab. And so this is information about key successes and changes and your progress for this particular cohort, the capacity building efforts. And so this is really an opportunity to include more of a narrative and to share those challenges, those successes, and the work that the sort of impact that the work that you're doing is having. You know, with all of this, you know, the first few tabs are really there for quantitative, you know, for the data in regards to the number of folks that you're reaching, to the number of activities that you're having. It's really there to enter in data in the cells that we've kind of blocked off for you to enter. And this tab is really an opportunity for that narrative, for you to really share a bit more why. And I can assure you that our team goes in every quarter and reviews every single quarterly progress report. So, you know, if you're completing this and you're thinking, well, you know, is this just going into the ether and another report that a funder is asking for? No, I can assure you that our team reviews and our team will be providing feedback each quarter to you if needed. So in the areas that, especially the first few times that, you know, funded partners are submitting their progress reports, you know, there's areas that we can all improve on, and data is not entered in the way that it should be. And so we will provide an opportunity to go ahead and relay that feedback directly to you. And then if needed, ask you to resubmit or update those numbers so we can change that on our end. And this is really to make sure that the data that we're collecting is accurate and it's aligned with the way that we're hoping to collect it. We are always open to your feedback. So if you have any questions, any concerns, you know, anything of that sort, you're more than welcome to share that with us. We can share that this progress report has been implemented since the first cohort, which started a little bit over 1.5 years ago. And so this is a tried tool. We have made some changes to it, and we are excited to share the new version of this with all of you all. And so the last piece I'll cover before I pass it over to Brianna, Noemi would really be about just how to submit this report. And we'll cover this at the end as well. And it is also included in the instructions, the background and instructions tab. So you might be wondering, you know, where do I submit this? Many folks, sometimes funders will have portals. I will share with you that most of our communication is going to be done via email. So each quarter you'll go ahead and name your quarterly progress report. So we ask that you save it with the year and the quarter that you're submitting, and then your organizational name. So an example of this would be for your first, for the first report that you're doing. So it would be Y1, Q1, and then dash, and then the name of your organization. And so that is something that we wanted to share. This allows us to be able to seamlessly save it on our end and know without having to dig into the reports on whose report it is. We know each quarter we'll be getting all of the cohorts, all of the funded partners in your cohorts report. And, you know, this makes sure that when we're saving them on our end, there is no questions and pieces on that. So you'll email these to myself, so Paul Vanderkoor, so pcore@sierrahealth.org. And I always encourage you on any communication to any of our staff at the center to always copy the Elevate Youth CA at shfcenter.org email. You know, this makes sure that that email does go into that shared email list that we all have. That email or another team member misses it, we all have access to this other email. And so we encourage you again to make sure that any and all emails that are coming to the center always copy the Elevate Youth CA email on them. And so with that, I'm sure you are eager to see what this quarterly progress report looks like. So we'll go ahead and do a walkthrough, and I'll pass it on to Noemi and Brianna to cover that.
Thanks, Paulvinder. So I will share my screen. So this would be the first page of the quarterly progress report. And like Paulvinder mentioned, this is just background and instructions where you can just find information relevant to the progress report. And this, once again, is for easy access, how to name the report and how to submit the report. And it's right on this background and instructions page. On this page, there's also the timeline of what the quarterly progress reports, the reporting periods they should each cover, and when they're due to the center. And then finally, on the background and instructions page, there are just some in-depth definitions of project outcomes. So pretty much what we mean when we say invest in youth empowerment, leadership, and development, like that would be written in these cells. And that is all for the background and instructions page. So I'll pause there to see if anyone on our team has anything else to add, or if there are any questions. Great. Okay, so moving over to the program profile page or tab. So this is where you'll find where you'll enter information on active partnerships and any technical assistance needs. So the first cell has high-level instructions. All of the data on this page will be entered into row 3. And for more in-depth instructions, you can use the field descriptions tab, and that is the last tab in this document. It's right here, and it will have further information for each cell and what should be entered there. So these first few cells, this is where you'll enter pretty standard information. So your agency name, the grant number, the county, as well as which progress report you are submitting. We do have some kind of example information in here to see what it would look like for this training. In cell F, you will enter the number of new active partners you engaged this quarter. And when we say active, we mean having a role and contributing through their actions toward a collective goal or achievement. And that is in regards to this quarter. And then in the next section is where you'll put the names of those organizations. And since everything is just in row 3, you'll be separating the names of the organizations by commas. Next, you will enter information on the number of partners by sector. So kind of being more specific on where those partners are working. So I have an example, one school, for example, and then one clergy or faith-based organization. And something to note here is that we ask that you only count each organization as one representative. So an example of that would be if you are working with 2 individuals at one school, so 2 faculty members, we ask that that's counted as one organization because it's one school. However, if you're working with 2 faculty members at 2 different schools, that would be counted as 2 partners in this section. And then scrolling over, we just have a number of different sectors. And if a sector that you're working with is not in this location, you could put that number in other, and then be sure to just name the sector in this section, in the other sectors page. And then we have technical assistance needs. So this is where you can mention and let us know what your training or technical assistance needs are. And those can be seen in these kind of listed numbers 1 through 8. But if it's not listed here, you can use the number 8 other, and in the same fashion, just write it in this section. And the last kind of question on this tab is for a financial update. So this is where we want just an overall number of your estimated total expenditure through this reporting period. So that is it for the program profile tab. I will pause there for any questions or comments from the team. Okay, so I'll move on to the demographics tab. There we go. So this page also has similar instructions on the first cell, and all of the data in this case should be entered into row 4. We do have some example numbers here. And we recommend starting with columns B through D. So kind of these overall total columns to tell us the total number of participants who started programs, the number of participants currently enrolled, and the number of participants who completed EYC programs. And all of these numbers refer to this reporting period. So moving over, each category has 2 cells, each demographic category. So we're asking for new participants this quarter and the participants who completed EYC programs this quarter. So for example, this cell shows that there were 2 new female participants this quarter. And that is the case for each demographic category. And the first 4 demographic categories, we ask for totals. So that is, you can see here. And in these cells, you actually don't need to fill in anything. It will auto-populate. And the totals in these cells should match with columns B and columns D. So for example, the total in gender identity for new participants this quarter is 5. And you can see in column B, the number is also 5. And when the number is correct and it matches, it will be green as it is here. And if it doesn't match, for example, if I added in someone else, it will turn gray. And that's how you can tell that there's a number that needs to be addressed so that those numbers are equal. Moving over to ethnic and culture group, this is another case where we ask for the total. and it will auto-populate and be a green match cells. One thing we do ask that for multiracial participants, we ask that you use the multiracial cells. So for example, if you have a participant who is African American and Hispanic, we ask that they are counted in the multiracial category. We understand that, you know, in your internal processes of capturing demographic information, it may have a check all that apply box, but for these numbers, we ask that you use the multiracial category since the data, this demographic data is aggregated. So moving over to age group, this is another one where we ask for the total and it should be green to know that the number is correct. And we ask for the demographic information of youth ages 12 to 26. We understand that you may be serving youth ages maybe younger than 12 or older than 26, but for these purposes, please only report on youth ages 12 to 26. And then the next category is primary language. And this is the last category that we have a total for. And this is the same case, we'll highlight green when it is correct. So we urge you, if this is not green, and there are some that you may not know, to use the unknown columns. And then moving over, these are some categories that may not apply to all of your participants. Palvinder kind of listed them out. So this information should be filled in when it applies to participants. So starting with LGBTQ2S+, those who are housing insecure, and there is a definition on here if you press on that one. Foster care status, system impacted youth, and then those who are part of a tribal community, and the name of the tribal community can be entered right in this space. And the following, just the new participants and the participants completed this program will be entered there just the same way. And then these last categories, we have some subcategories of ethnic or racial groups. So we have some Asian subcategories, as well as Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander subcategories. And we ask that if you are using these columns, that the number, for example, of Asian youth that is represented here, so here we have 2, we ask that it matches up with the number of Asian youth, sorry for the scrolling, that was represented on this first kind of overall broader section. And then the last tab, the last kind of question on this page is just a space for any additional comments, notes, or description information that you would like to add. Since we do only ask for numbers in this row 4, if you have any kind of words you would like to share or information about the demographic numbers listed, you can put that in this cell. So I'll pause there once again. If anyone from the team, Noemi, has anything to add, or if there are any questions. In that case, I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Brianna. I'll now share my screen to go over the Youth Empowerment tab. Can you see my screen? Perfect. As Palvinder mentioned, in this tab, you're going to enter the prevention activities that you conducted in this quarter. And so starting in row 3, you will enter the details for each new activity in its own row. And you can also refer to the field descriptions for more information on how to complete this tab. Starting with column B, you will enter the date when the activity was conducted. And in column C, you will enter an end date for recurring activities. And in column D, you will enter the type of prevention activity, and you can select that from the drop-down menu. So you could click here and then select the activity. For example, you conducted an educational workshop or webinar, a training, mentoring session, an activity involving arts or social event, or you can select other if the activity conducted was other than the ones listed here. Now here I have, sorry. Now here I have some examples. For the first one, I listed an educational workshop that happened in September 24th. And because that was a one-time event, it doesn't have an end date. And in column E, again, you will complete this for recurring events. So because this was not recurring, I didn't enter anything there. But for the next example, the meeting that happened in this 3-month period from July to September, there were 12 meetings that occurred. And so I indicated that in column E. Now in columns F through L, you are going to select the topics that were covered in each activity. For example, for the educational workshop listed, substance use prevention was one of the topics covered, but the other topics such as mental health or healing, policy systems or environmental advocacy, leadership, workforce exploration, they were not covered, so I indicated no for those topics. And these fields have a drop-down menu where you will select yes if the topic was covered or no if it was not covered. In my second example, the meeting, substance use prevention was covered, so I indicated yes, as well as the leadership component. So I indicated yes, and also the workforce exploration was covered. In column M, you're going to select the primary audience for the activity. In these examples, I selected program youth because that was the focus of the activity. And this field also has a drop-down menu with the primary audiences. You can click on that drop-down menu and select. The options are program youth, parents of the youth in the program, so that you may engage the parents as part of your intervention, or the program implementers. For example, you're working with school teachers who are doing the intervention, or the general public. In column N, you are going to enter the zip code where the activity was conducted. And if the activity happened remotely, you will enter RC instead of the zip code. In columns O and P, we ask for you to enter the number of participants. So there are two options. Option 1 is for you to enter unduplicated numbers. That's always the ideal. So you have the total number of unduplicated youth, meaning each person counted only once that attended the activity. Please provide the number, but in the case that you don't have the unduplicated number, we ask you to enter the duplicated number of participants in column P. And for recurring events such as weekly meetings, monthly meetings with the youth, we ask you to provide both. So to provide the number of unduplicated participants and also the duplicated number. For example, for the meeting event that I listed here, you saw that 12 meetings occur in that period of 3 months, and 6 participants were in that program. The 6 participants attended the 12 meetings, so the total number of duplicated youth is 72. In the next column, Q, you will enter a bit of a description about the activity, for example, the event name, in a brief description of what was the event that you conducted. And in column R, you can enter additional notes or comments. Again, these comments will help us to, will give us more insight into the activities. And if you feel that that is needed for us to understand the data more, then we encourage you to use that tab or that column rather. I will pass to see if you have any questions. And Brianna, anything that I missed? Okay. Anybody has questions about this tab?
Yes, so there are some questions. Can we go over duplicated and unduplicated again from 2 people?
Yes. So for the number of participants, the unduplicated, providing the unduplicated count of participants is the ideal. So that would be counting each person only once that attended the activity. For example, in this webinar, in this example, the first one that was a webinar, if you have, I put here 10, that's assuming that I know that 10 different individuals attended the event. But I know that for example, virtual events, it might be harder to provide unduplicated number of participants, recognizing that we have provided column P where you can provide that number of duplicated, let's say, because 83 youth attended the webinar, it was harder for you to tell who was a new participant and who was not a new participant. One tip to get to the, who is a new participant is to, for example, in a virtual event, if you could do a poll, and in that poll ask if this is the first time that they're joining the event, and then that will be a way where you could provide a duplicated number in that case. But for duplicated or recurring events, so like meetings with the youth that happen every week or every month, then we ask you to provide both the unduplicated number of participants and the duplicated number of participants. Let me know if that was clear or if that answered your question. Are there any other questions? Okay, that was the only question.
There is another question. Can you show us again very quickly the drop-down menu of activities, workshop, art, etc.?
Yes. One second, I'm having trouble with scrolling. So the options are an educational workshop or webinar, training, a meeting. Again, this could be meeting with the youth, like weekly meetings, monthly meetings, bi-weekly meetings with the youth, mentoring, and that's if as part of your program, mentorship is one component. Arts, social events, or other, if that prevention activity was other than these options here. And let me know if you have particular question on what will come towards one of these categories.
I think that answered their question. They said thank you.
Okay, I'll jump to the next tab and then we'll come back to see if there are more questions on this tab. For the participant outcomes and capacity building tab, as Balvinder mentioned, this provides you more of a narrative or a space for a narrative responses. And the first item that we ask is on the successes. For this question, we ask you to describe your top 1 to 3 successes during this reporting period. And these successes may include, for example, program operations, such as getting the staff that you needed to implement this program, providing the training for the staff, successes with program delivery, forming partnerships with key organizations, mentorship, capacity building, or youth leadership efforts. And there is a maximum word limit of 200 words for this question. The next question focuses on challenges and plan solutions. We ask you to describe the main challenges during this reporting period. And challenges may include challenges with program operations, with delivering the program, with partnerships, engaging youth in leadership, with your capacity building efforts or any other area. And we ask you to include the steps that you will take or that already have taken to address these challenges. And just another thing to mention for this really helps us to see in what areas our team can provide assistance to you. For the next section, it focuses on participant outcomes. And it asks you to identify your progress towards achieving your overall project goal through these participant outcomes. And for this part, you will complete this table. This table includes program activities that led to the participant outcomes achieved, and then the achieved participant outcomes here. And I will go through some examples of how to complete this table in a moment. The next question focuses on capacity building. We ask you that in this space to share about your progress towards achieving your capacity building objectives this reporting period. And those objectives will be in your work plan. Please include the main activities that you conducted related to the capacity building efforts, and also what were the results of those activities. And in the last item, we ask you to share any other comments or highlights that were not covered in the sections above, including media coverage. And we also ask you to provide any suggestions to improve this reporting tool that you may have, especially since you are coming with fresh lenses. And so if something is not clear, then so that we can clarify that. Before passing for questions, I will share my screen to go through the examples of participant outcomes. So let me stop sharing my screen here. This is one of the resources that we have created, again, providing examples of participant outcomes that you can refer to when completing the participant outcomes table. So what is a participant outcome? Participant outcomes include changes in knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, or behaviors, as well as improved skills such as leadership skills among the participants. Participant outcomes, however, are not the number of youth engaged or the activities conducted. Some tips to complete the table: when describing the participant outcome, make sure to stay or to specify the change that happened and for how many participants. So what was the change that happened? Was it a change in knowledge? Was it improved skills of the youth? And how many participants had that change? And I'll go through some examples in a moment. And to describe the associated program activities, we ask you to describe them in 2 to 3 sentences. So again, to be concise but detailed, providing key details such as what was done. For example, if a training was conducted, a webinar was conducted, who was involved, including major partners who were critical in achieving the outcome, where and when it took place, and how participant outcomes were measured. For example, did you use an observation tool, or you were observing, you asked them to present on what they have learned, and then you wrote notes down on what they presented? Did you utilize a Zoom meeting poll, a survey, a focus group, a photo voice, or other tool to gather this data on outcomes? So we ask you to also include that under the associated program activities. And let me go through some of the examples here. And for this training, I color-coded some of these key elements. So what was done in purple, in green, who was involved, in this like salmon color, where and when, in this brown color, how. In this example, I read it at one virtual RISE event on February 2nd of 2021. Program mentors discussed healthy coping mechanisms as an alternative to substance use. This hour-and-a-half one-time event was held on Instagram Live and garnered a peak of 100 viewers. The program staff created an Instagram poll before and after the live section, focused on the knowledge of healthy coping mechanisms. So as you can see in purple, we have the what. The what, the Rise Up event, and what was about. So it was about healthy coping mechanisms as an alternative to substance use. When it happened and where, it happened in February 2nd, and it happened virtually through Instagram. Who was involved in green? We have the program's mentors were involved in the event, but also the youth, 100 viewers. And in brown, how this data on outcomes was collected. This program staff used an Instagram poll before and after the event to look at the knowledge of healthy coping mechanisms among the attendees. And for the participant outcomes column in this table, we have 50% of the youth reported increased knowledge. So we have how many youth, and then what was the outcome? The outcome was increased knowledge of healthy alternative coping mechanisms following our Instagram event. 50% of the youth who took the survey could name at least 2 healthy coping mechanisms by the conclusion of the event. So this is more detail about the increased knowledge, more evidence, because they knew they were able to name at least 2 healthy coping mechanisms, they demonstrated that knowledge that they have. In this next example, we hosted 10 weekly events with 25 participants as part of the training component of our program from January through May of 2021 in Sacramento. So here we have when it happened and where, and what was the activity. That 10 weekly meetings, who was involved, 25 participants in the program staff. This could be more specific if they would have mentioned, or if this example had who is we. Each meeting covered 3 focus areas: negotiation, advocacy, and community outreach in relation to substance use. Program staff, that's the we, use pre and post training surveys to collect outcome data. So this tells us the method that they use to collect the outcome data. They use a survey before and after the meetings. And for the outcome, again, it shows that the outcome was increased self-efficacy in 75 of the youth who attended the weekly meetings. And then it provides more detail into key elements that they included in those surveys. I'll go over this example. In this example, 25 youth, that's who was engaged in Sacramento where it happened, participated in a Photo Voice project, a community-based participatory research method. That's what? The youth took photos in their communities and wrote reflections to identify from their perspective the most significant accomplishments from the program at both the baseline and follow-up. So the method that they used here was Photo Voice, which was the prevention activity, but that was also used as to gather data on the accomplishments from the program. So how the program had helped them. Through the reflection that the youth completed. And so in this example, we can see that the outcome was increased advocacy capacity among the youth and community members, because not shown here, but in this example, the Photo Voice was also engaged the community through a presentation on the photos and the narratives that the youth use. And so that also increased awareness among the community members who attended that presentation section, and it increased public support. There are other examples. For example, this one, in this example, the data on the outcomes was gathered through a virtual focus group. And so that provided more of a qualitative narrative data as opposed to the quantitative base number data that the other examples show. But let me stop sharing and pause to see if there are questions on participant outcomes.
So it doesn't look like there are questions on participant outcomes or the examples just yet. There are some questions on the ETH Empowerment tab regarding duplicated and unduplicated. So maybe we can talk about those now.
Sure.
The first one is, so unduplicated is who is in the meeting, and duplicated is youth enrolled but not technically showing up. Did I get that correct?
No, so you will consider that just for that particular event. So unduplicated, it would be who is in the meeting if you is a different participant. Let's say you have 5 youth in the program. And so they all attended the event, then the unduplicated will be 5. And so the duplicated is more if you're not able to provide, let's say 20 youth joins an event, but out of those 20 youth, there's and this is more for the recurring events. You know that those 20 youth had already been counted and had attended another meeting. Let's say they attended the previous meeting. Out of those, in that example, right, you have 5 participants. If those participants, the unduplicated is 5. But if for the duplicated will be, let's say that you hosted 2 of those meetings. And so the 5 attended those 2 meetings, then the duplicated will be 10 youth. Hopefully that helped to clarify it. Brianna, anything else that you will add to that question?
No, I was gonna mention the same thing. Another question is asking, is there another word you can use for both terms? So I think this is in reference to duplicated and unduplicated. Another term could be, I guess, repeated, or the number of attendees. Unduplicated would be with every person counted just once. And then duplicated would be where either it's a repeated event, so it's the same people counted twice, or multiple times, or you didn't have the chance to find out who was a first-time attendee and who was coming back to your event. So that could be a way to distinguish between duplicated and unduplicated.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that might make it confusing is you are listing the different events that you are conducted, and it may be that in the webinar that you conducted with the youth, some of those youth did participated, right? But in the program that you have, but then you conducted a training with them as well as other cohort. And so it may be that you have duplicated numbers in those 2 listed activities, and that's okay, because we're asking you to report each different activity. So those will be 2 different activities, a webinar and the training. But within the activity, if you know the unduplicated number, that will be for that event, then that would be the ideal.
And then one more question. So does that, oh, sorry, there's 2 questions kind of on this topic. So does that mean duplicate are students that show up consistently for the length of the program, and unduplicate are ones who only show up for one? So duplicates would be students that are, if you are using a cohort model or something where you're meeting repeatedly, the number that you would put in the option 2, the duplicated numbers, would be the total number of youth with the youth duplicated. So like in Noemi's example, she mentioned 2 meetings with 5 youth. The duplicated number would be 10 because they showed up for the first meeting and the second meeting. But the unduplicated number would be just 5. So with the unduplicated number is for the ones who only show up for 1. Naomi, could you address that part of the question?
Susan, if you could unmute yourself and explain more, because I think we're missing the context in this example.
Hi. Okay, so I think with Brianna's last explanation, it just clicked in my head. I think I got it now. So yeah, I think I got it. Like I have like the tip of it, and then we shall see when reporting period comes.
Okay, and what we'll do is we'll also provide more examples for this unduplicated and duplicated, because yeah, I think that this could be one confusing piece in the report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
And one other question was, are there any guidelines or restrictions for surveys/testing, or does it just depend on each collaborator's expertise?
We don't have guidance. It depends on each organization, and if you already have tools in place, we're more than happy to take a look at those tools and provide feedback. If, again, maybe we can provide some other resources that could be useful that some programs are doing. So if you have particular tools that you want us to take a look at, or questions on how should we be collecting, or how could we collect this data, then again, we're more than happy to have the one-on-one meeting, or we also have office hours, and in those office hours, we could also cover those type of questions.
So kind of on the topic of resources, I will cover one more resource that we'll be sharing with you all today. And this is an optional data tracker. So this is something that can be used to keep track of the different events, your participants, your mentors and mentee information. So I'll go through this pretty briefly. So the first page has instructions kind of similar to the background and instructions page on the quarterly progress report, just some information on what can be added in each tab. And once again, this is optional. If you have a system in place that's already working, then feel free to continue to use that, and feel free to use this, you know, in whatever ways that fills any gaps that that system may have, if any. But we ask that you do not send this to us, and this is kept for your own use, because we do not want any kind of individual level data like names and phone numbers and specific kind of identifying information of your participants. We only want the aggregate numbers that you'll be sharing in the quarterly progress report. So I'll just focus on the, well, I'll just quickly show the participants page. This is similar to, this is to aid in your completion of the quarterly progress report. So the questions that you see here are similar to those questions. So I want to go through the youth demographics tab because it has some helpful information. So once again, because it has identifying information, we included like IDs. So that's another way to kind of keep track of who's who, of who your participants are. You could add their name, address, phone number, kind of contact information, as well as their enrollment date. And then these have drop downs for the different questions that are asked on the quarterly progress report regarding demographics. So gender identity, LGBTQS2S plus status, ethnic cultural group, age group, housing insecure, foster care system impacted, primary language, and if they belong to a tribal group, what group that is. And these are all actually drop-down menus. It's not showing correctly, but these will all be able to, here we go. You'll be able to just choose what fits for that individual. And once again, we urge you, if it's someone that you're working with consistently, say if it starts out as unknown, to collect that information at some point. So scrolling over, we have participant status. So this is something that can be used to see who are your participants who are currently enrolled and who are those who have completed the program. So for new participants, that's something that you could filter by enrollment date. So over here, you can filter with enrollment date and just use the quarterly progress reporting dates, start and end date. But for currently enrolled, that's something that you can filter too far over here with participant status. So if they are active, then they would be considered currently enrolled. And that would be regardless of start date. So say in a couple of quarters, if you have youth who you've been working with for the past few quarters and they're still active and they're still coming to weekly meetings or sessions, then they would be considered active and they would be counted in the currently enrolled youth, which is column C on the quarterly progress report. But for those who are completed, or for the kind of second session, so participants who completed EYC programs this quarter, you would use those who are closed with successful completion. So this status, this column Q, has different kind of reasons that a youth may stop coming or kind of exit the program. So there's successful completion, which means say you had a cohort model and the cohort is completed, that would be successful completion. If they dropped out or you lost contact with them, if they were asked to leave, if they were arrested or incarcerated, if the services were no longer appropriate, or if there was some other reason, or if you did not collect that information. So all of that could be captured in this section, but we ask that when you're reporting the numbers of completed, that it's just the youth with successful completion. And we also added filters here so that you could be able to filter out those who are closed. And for example, just successful. So for this example, the number would be one youth. So that was just a quick overview of the data tracker, just the youth demographics tab. But once again, each of these tabs could be used to help you fill out information for the quarterly progress report. So I think we can, if there are any questions, you can share those, of course, in the Q&A or in the chat. And if not, we'll pass it to Latajane and Andrew to kind of close us out.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Brianna and Noemi. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat or in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand. That way we can give you permission to unmute, and then you can just ask us live as well. All right, so I see one question here around the office hours. So perfect. We'll be sharing that in the next slide, and then we'll also be sending out an email with the Zoom link for the office hours. All right, if there's no other questions for now, then I'll just keep moving along for kind of the next steps and to kind of close us out.
Andrew, Sorry to interrupt. We actually do have one question in the Q&A form. So how do we access the quarterly reporting tool? Will it be emailed to us or do we have to find it on the website? And our team will be emailing the quarterly reporting tool and a follow-up email to this webinar, in addition to the office hours registration links, as well as our contact information and the recording of this session. So we will be sending out the quarterly reporting tool template soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Latajane, for catching that for me. All right, so I'll just be sharing kind of the reporting timeline. So this, again, you can access the reporting timeline in the reporting tool as well on the first tab. But for this one, we kind of added in some other due dates. So you can see here, you know, what are the quarterly reports, the reporting periods, and then the deadline to the center. And I know here, end of year report is something new. So next tab, we'll be sending out an email with invite for the next webinar. So we'll be going over the end of the year report overview on Tuesday, November 2nd from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. So I won't dive too deeply into the specifics of the end of year report, since that's what we'll be going over the webinar. But essentially, you know, we as a team, we realize that there's certain data that fits better when asked quarterly, while others makes more sense to ask it on a yearly basis. And so again, we'll go over into more detail of the end of year report on Tuesday, November 2nd. And we'll be sending out that, that Zoom invite shortly as well. And then lastly, the evaluation office hours. So Brianna and Noemi, our evaluation team, will be hosting 2 office hour sessions to answer any questions that you may have on any subject pertaining to evaluation. So this can include, but is not limited to, evaluation practices, the data reporting tool template itself, or the end of year report. Both of these sessions will be on Tuesday, November 16th from 1 to 2 p.m. and then also Tuesday, November 30th from 1 to 2 p.m. And again, we'll send out the Zoom links and everything shortly. All right. So with that, I'll just pause again really quick to check if there's any other questions. But otherwise, you know, thank you all of you for attending this webinar. And again, our team is here to support you in any way regarding the reporting tool. So don't hesitate to reach out to our team. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day and their week. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.